Hello, it's Davey Mooney, coming to you from the University of North Texas, where I run the jazz guitar program. Benedetto artist, Sunnyside Records artist. The latest is The Word. And looky here, the new book is here. It's in my hands. Hard copy, How to Achieve Great Jazz Phrasing, Practical Method. Also have two other Mel Bay books, but today I want to talk to y'all about this one. I just got back from Japan, did a week-long tour, a lot of fun, kind of getting over my jet lag now. It's been a week. I had just gotten used to the Japan time, and then I came home, and it took another week to get used to this time. But I feel like I'm okay. I'm sleeping halfway decently, and yeah, it's, fifth or sixth week of the semester, something like that here at UNT. We're doing it, and all that good stuff. But anyway, yeah, the book, y'all. I just got done doing an interview with Bob Baker, Jazz Guitar Today, about it, and I'd like to kind of take you through it a little bit. And so basically I came up with this idea because for me, jazz phrasing was sort of the toughest nut to crack, kind of the last thing that I think came together for me, and effective jazz phrasing, I guess. And to skip ahead a little bit, in the first chapter of the book, I define phrasing, jazz phrasing, as the organization of ideas in a jazz improvisation. And I spent a little time talking about, my thoughts on the sort of the classical world and how they define phrasing, some analogies between speech and musical phrases and poetry. And it was funny, Bob Baker he found that section to be a bit dense, but it's short. It's just the first chapter. I feel like I needed to do a nod to the classical world and the academic side of things. But the title of the book is A Practical Method, and with all my books, I try to give the reader something that they can use, and a method, and something where you can actually work on the problem, whatever it is, in an effective way. And I tell an anecdote in the book about it's a real situation, a student of mine who I call Joe in the book. And this was a student I had kind of early in my time here at UNT, one of the best I've ever had, and somebody who was so full of fire and passion. And they would come at like 9 in the morning, just like ready to go, just blazing eighth notes. And the thing was, though, it was a little bit too much, and it's hard to deal with that as a teacher, because you have someone who is so talented and just killing it, and the last thing you want to do is like quench the fire, because that's important, and that's kind of like what made them so great. So I was trying to find a way to just kind of like help organize things a little better in the improvisations and present things in another way. So what we hit upon, what occurred to me just kind of out of the blue, and this was years ago when I finally put it into book form, was this idea of, I think we were working on Bud Powell solos. He was transcribing Bud Powell, and I thought, like, well, what if since you're doing this on finale program, what if you just took the solo you transcribed and switched it to rhythmic notation, and then we could play the phrases of the solo. In other words, rhythmic notation would let us see where Bud played and where he didn't play. And we don't have to necessarily play the exact rhythms, but the idea would be to observe the phrasing structure of that solo as a way to practice like effective jazz phrasing. And Bud Powell was the person we were working with, but like in the book, I have a chapter on a bunch of different people where we explore that idea. Basically, I take an excerpt from specific solos. I wasn't able to give you the actual notes of the original version that the person played, because that kind of gets into copyright, scary stuff. But I do have the rhythmic notation version so the first chapter, well, it's chapter 2 in the book, but the first one after the introduction is like a Dexter Gordon, an excerpt from You Stepped Out of a Dream from Swingin' Affair. The next chapter is an excerpt of Lester Young's Lady Be Good solo, the famous solo, so a different style, but also great phrasing. Then chapter 4 is a bit from Eric Dolphy on Bird's Mother from Far Cry, bass clarinet. Chapter 5 is a little bit of Joe Pass on Nuage, again, just in rhythmic notation. Chapter 6, Keith Jarrett on Just in Time for Standards in Norway. Chapter 7, Miles with the live version of Straight No Chaser from it's like Miles 1958. What do they call it? I forget the name of the record. Chapter 8 is Bud Powell. It's an excerpt from that great video some of you may have seen of him playing anthropology on YouTube. It's amazing, like from some film, like kind of experimental artsy film from the 60s where he's at Café Montmartre in Copenhagen. And then chapter 9 is Kenny Durham on I Love You from, I think it's Introducing Kenny Durham. In chapter 10, I did one of my own solos just to kind of, since this is my thing, not to compare myself to these jazz greats, but kind of to see the way I do it in practice. And I did my solo from the Ancient Song from the album Way Back. And anyway, yeah, like I said, I do a little, at the beginning of each chapter, a sort of excerpt of, further short excerpts of their phrasing style, maybe like a 4-bar phrase. And then I go to the rhythmic notation of the solo. And then I demonstrate the method. So I improvise using the phrase structure of the person, of the solo, specific solo, using my own notes. And I'll demonstrate that live for you now. Well, not live, I recorded it about 10 minutes ago, but in the moment, so to speak. It was in the moment when I did it. And when you get the book, you get the backing tracks. Like you'll hear the one that I'm using here. You'll get the recording of me playing the solo, which is transcribed with fingerings in the book. And you also get videos of me doing it in the studio. So you can kind of see, because I realize that my fingerings are a little unorthodox, but you kind of see where I played everything in case that interests you. I just wanted to give you that. So this is a demonstration of me doing, so I'm playing my notes on the phrase structure of Dexter Gordon from the first couple choruses of You Stepped Out of a Dream from A Swingin' Affair. So check it out.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
So there you have it, and that's the basic idea I found over the course of doing the backing tracks for the book. It's good because I actually get to test out if the method is doable. It's challenging in the sense that when you're thinking about the phrasing, so I'm looking at the page and trying to fit my thing into the structure, and so perhaps it's less spontaneous or creative in terms of the note choice. But again, the point of this would be if you're the type of guitarist, as I was, who is really excited about their ability to play all the changes and play all the stuff, but maybe like what's lagging behind or what's lacking is a very effective phrasing structure, a way to organize your ideas. This could be helpful just to see how all these masters did it differently. Although there's a similarity, if there's a common theme to all their solos, I sort of use the analogy of Morse code in that there's a variety of phrase lengths. Like nobody that I can think of whose phrasing I admire lacks this idea of like, so you might do a long phrase, other long, maybe one more long, but then you need like a short or a medium, or maybe you start off short, short, short. A good example is, I didn't do this in the book, but Joe Pass's solo on Relaxing at Camarillo from the live record Joy Spring, where he goes like ba 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 da da ba ba da ba da ba 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 da da ba da 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 I think it's 9 bars of eighth notes. So he does those 4 short ones, and it's like if he kept doing the short ones, you'd eventually sort of like lose interest, But he does the 4 short ones, and you're just like, well, what's going to happen? And he does like a 9-bar phrase of like continuous eighth notes, and it goes on from there. And the variety of it's just a C blues, and you know that he knows how to play a C blues, and we know what a C blues is supposed to sound like. What really makes it so effective and so brilliant to me is that organization and the phrase structure. So yeah, and let's see what else is in here. So yeah, like I said, I go through, and I give my thoughts on each of these players' styles. I'm looking at the PDF here, and but I mean the meat of it is sort of, like I said, I present the solo and rhythmic notation, so then you can practice doing it with the backing tracks, and then I have my my version of this, me doing it, so you can see how I did it, and yeah, then a little conclusion, and then towards the end, I just, like I said, I pick one of my own actual solos that I recorded just to kind of show you, I don't know, how I do it, like in practice. A solo that I think is pretty good. Maybe it's not. It's hard as a musician. We tend to be a little overcritical of ourselves, many of us, and I'm one of those. But this isn't my worst solo ever. Kind of like the phrasing of it. And then at the end, I have a little suggested listening where I, again, sort of reiterate the songs that I've used in the previous chapters, and then maybe also some other records or, individual recordings of songs that I really admire the phrasing of, and then some suggested reading books that I talk about in the book, in my book. So anyway, keep this nice and short and sweet. So I'll let you all go, but please check out the book, y'all. How to Achieve Great Jazz Phrasing: A Practical Method. And as we get all the vocabulary under our fingers that I gave you in Personalizing Jazz Vocabulary, and you figure out the neck of the guitar and how to play positionally and into the labyrinth, the new book will help you to organize all that great information. All right, check it out. It's from Mel Bay, melbay.com.